how many of you, I'm going to guess probably a lot, have done snowmobiling? Show of hands. Okay, I had never done it, right? I'm a Vegas girl. I'm used to sunshine, and I'm sitting there going, and here's Mr. Grant at his best saying, you're going to get out there. David's like, you're going to get out there and you're going to have some fun. And I will tell you, there was this one particular hill that was very steep, and everyone else was going down it. And I was just like at the top in my snowmobile, just staring at it, thinking, oh my gosh, like, I'm going to hurt myself. I had just tipped the snowmobile a little bit before that, and now I'm sitting here looking down going, do I take the plunge? Anyway, eventually I did it. I survived. I'm still standing here today, which is the good news. But I will share with you, it reminded me when I added this slide last night. Dave was kind enough to take photos. This is me with my arms up, just celebrating that I'm alive and I survived. You can't really see the photo. This is my husband next to me, but it was one of those adventures where I said, this is very similar to entrepreneurship, right? Feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And whether it's a roller coaster ride, which I do love those scare me less than snowmobiling. I will tell you, I've had probably since I first got my foray into entrepreneurship that I've really had to check myself on is that I don't look, and my business doesn't look like a typical entrepreneurial company. It doesn't look, I don't necessarily act like a typical entrepreneur. I think that has actually served me well in the type of work I do. But it's interesting because society tells us, right? This is what an entrepreneur looks like. This is, here's the people of the six, Oprah Winfrey, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, the list goes on. Here's what success looks like, right? And at the end of the day, there's also a lot of other stories of success that can look differently. Not putting all my eggs in one basket. So when I started in 2006, I mentioned I had that anchor client. And I ended up getting a couple of other smaller clients, but that anchor client was my anchor client for the first 2 to 3 years and was probably about 85 to 90% of the money I was bringing in at that stage. And then 2008 happened. And I don't know, for those of you who remember, 2008, it's like the world crashed, right? The economy crashed, everything went south. And so here I have a huge philanthropist that's been wildly successful in real estate and land development, and he was a huge risk taker, right? I can't even imagine the risk he put. And he lost big, right? He ended up going bankrupt, had to do a lot of restructuring with his companies and his models. And so he still stayed, he and his significant other have stayed a client the entire time, but it went from, 90% of probably the revenue I was bringing in to 5%, 10% overnight. And they're still steady today. And I will always, they got me started. I'm forever loyal. But that really was a big wake up call because it was like, oh my goodness, I'm only 2 or 3 years into business. This happened. How am I going to survive? So I quickly had to make some adjustments. I had to start getting a little more aggressive with going out there. I had to start leaning on relationships and contacts I had. And it was, I have a lot of gray hairs that I cover up with hair dye to prove it. When the market crashed, it became easy to lose sight of what I really started doing. And I would say yes to just about any kind of job, right? So people would say, oh, we need you to help us with this. We need you to help us do a search and hiring process for our executive director. We need you to write marketing copy for our website. We need you to write grants. I knew how to do this roughly, or I figured out I could teach myself. The amount of energy spent, right, into trying to learn and become an expert in something that wasn't my expertise and wasn't my passion really was exhausting. So it didn't serve me well. It sort of diffused what I really was meant and known for. So I still struggle with this, you guys. It was great. Like at the time, I understand why it happened. Still to this day, there's times where I go, oh, if there's not enough business in the pipeline, it is easy when someone needs your help to just say yes. But it has never served me. And it's good to say this again today to remind myself of that, right? I will say that from an overarching perspective, I have held on too long. It is my Achilles heel. I hold on too long because I'm loyal to a fault. So I hold on to clients that aren't good clients too long. I hold on to subcontractors or people doing work with me too long because I really believe in them. And I think, I think it comes from a good place, but it doesn't serve the business well at times, right? Because there's times you have to part ways and say thank you and have the hard conversations. And I have had those hard conversations, but it's not my natural go-to. And sometimes you learn after doing things and losing in a big way that you could have done it a little differently or a little better. So back to where I started with the entrepreneurship journey. What most people want to hear when they say, how are you doing? How's your business doing? They want to hear you saying you grew, you added this many staff, you added these new locations. And because my business model isn't set up that way, I've sometimes struggled over the years of how do I define success in a way that others, can appreciate and not get into that trap myself of just thinking, okay, it was my most profitable year in business. That means it was my most successful. So 2022 was my most profitable year in business. And I will tell you, it was the worst year of my entire 18 years doing this. And I worked myself to the ground. My subcontractors were worked hard. We all were burned out. And it was at that stage at the end of the year when I thought, I don't know if I can do this anymore, right? I don't have any more in me to give. I don't know if what I'm doing makes a difference. That's scary when you get to that place. It was true burnout. It was the actual definition of what burnout is, all three elements. And that's scary when you've built your whole life in business and you now don't know if you want to do it anymore. And you're not sure if, you even have the energy or desire to do it anymore. That was a scary place to be. And it's because I worked myself to death. And really it had all just caught up with me. So I think for 2023 was a recalibration year. 2024 is a little bit of that. 2023, I took a hit. I didn't bring in as much money, but I felt so much happier and full of life and energy at the end of the year. And I was and I had happier people I was working with, and we weren't all just killing ourselves. And I was you know what? I care about human beings. That's why I got into this business. I care about myself. I care about others. So maybe it isn't just about the buck and the bottom line.